All right, call the meeting to order at 7:02. Tonight is the annual public hearing for the Community Preservation Committee. So we're gonna have that first and then we'll conduct our regular business following that. So to start off, just thought we'd do some introductions. My name is Wendy Reed. I represent the Select Board.
Ray Cook, Planning Board.
Lisa Forbush, Helps Housing Authority.
Doug Mead, Parks and Rec. John Dodge, Open Space Committee.
Bob James, Historic Commission.
Angus Jennings, Town Manager.
Jen Gary, Administrative Assistant.
So Jen supports the CPC as part of her function in town hall. All right, so if you can pull up the presentation. Go to the next slide. So tonight's meeting is, as I said, it's an annual requirement, and it's the primary intent is to get input from the public on how we spend our CPA funds. So I'm going to just briefly go over what the Community Preservation Act is, what the sources of funding for it are. There's only, specific things that you can use the money for, so we'll go over that. The Community Preservation Committee, I'll talk about what our role is, and then part of what we want to do tonight is update our community preservation plan. So I want to look back at what we did in 2025, what we identified as resources and what our goals were. And we'll be actively updating that tonight for our new plan for next year. And then just briefly talk about the two current CPA projects we have ongoing. So the Community Preservation Act, what that does is it allows local entities to create a fund that creates or preserves resources in these four areas: historic resources, community housing, and then open space and recreation is in one category, but they have different uses. So each one of those gets 10% of the funds automatically, and then there is additional money that could be applied for. So open space and recreation is one category, gets 10%, community housing and historic. So under this act, communities have to vote to adopt it, which West Newbury did, and then you also have to vote on what percent surcharge on property taxes that you will implement. And so that could be 0.5 to 3%. And the higher surcharge you have, the more state matching you get on the funds that you surcharge. And then the final component of the act is you have to adopt a bylaw that establishes this committee in order to implement the requirements of the act. So in FY25, these were the sources of the funding that we received. So 3% property tax surcharge, about $426,000. Interest on our investments, so that's the accumulated funds that we haven't spent since the fund was implemented, $168,000. State matching, $163,000. That's because we were at the 3%. There were actually multiple rounds of state matching that we were eligible for. And then the next source, the gifts, grants, and donations. Typically, there's not a dollar amount in that category. The reason there is this year is because we purchased the Sawmill Brook property using CPA funds, and then we were reimbursed by a grant, $343,000. So that's why that shows up in that category. So in total, $1.1 million came into the CPA fund this year. These are the balances. So as I said, this represents what we just looked at in the prior slide, as well as what was not spent of prior years funding. So you can see each one of these categories. The community house, this is as of October 30th. So at some point, the community housing amount will be reduced because we transferred that to the Affordable Housing Trust. But you can see there's $510,000 historic, open space, $145,000. Undesignated means all the money that's left over. So once you take out the 10% for each of those categories, all of the money left over is undesignated, which means it could be used for any of those three categories. So it still has to be community housing, historic, or open space and recreation, but it's above and beyond what's already targeted to those. So in total, $4.5 million. That's a lot of money. So these are the allowed uses. The categories are across the top, and then the use, they call that the verbs. kind of a complicated table. This is actually a summary of a very complicated table that the state puts out. But basically, you can use it to acquire resources in any one of the categories. The only category you can't use it to create resources is the historic resources. Obviously, you can't create historic resource. It's only historic because it's been there for a long time. Preserve in all the categories. Support is another one that you can only use funds to support community housing, so you can't use it to support historic or open space and recreation. And then rehabilitate, that has changed. Typically, you were not allowed to use funds to rehabilitate, but 2012, they modified the act, and now you can use it for recreation, historic resources, and you can also use it for community housing and open space only if those resources were purchased with CPA funds. So if there's specific questions, I have the very complicated state table about how do you define those things, and we can talk about that after if there's interest. If you can go back, Angus, one thing I want to say is that, can you go back to the prior? No, the table, sorry. Yeah. So historic resources, in order to qualify as a historic resource under this, it either has to be on the state register of historic places, or it has to have been determined by the local historic commission to be of interest, archaeological or historical. So those are the two things that would make a resource eligible to be funded. On open space, if you do invest CPA funds, there has to be some kind of restriction on the property, either a conservation restriction or an APR, so that it remains protected. Okay. So the CPC, Community Preservation Committee, we were established by the bylaw. And our role is to establish priorities for the town for spending of these funds. We review applications for funding. We have a two-part process. The first is it eligible for funding based on that table we just looked at? And then if it is, how much funding do we think is appropriate? And then we would recommend that to town meeting. That would be a warrant article on the town meeting warrant. We have to hold an annual public hearing, which is what we're doing tonight, and then also update the community preservation plan on an annual basis. So we'll take any input we receive tonight. I've tasked each of us to go back and talk to our boards, and then we will update the plan in January, and that'll be on the website. So the membership is, some of the rules are set by statute, but that's in the left-hand column. So that's the state act that identified 5 committees that had to be represented on this CPC. And then West Newbury, when we enacted our bylaw, we also added a requirement that a select board member be on this committee. And it used to be an at-large member from the community, but a few years ago, we updated the bylaw to require that an open space committee member be on here. Because open space is one of the categories, so it just made sense to have an open space committee member. And then the town manager is ex officio, which just means that he doesn't have any voting authority, but he's an active member of the committee. And then this is one committee that each person is appointed annually. So the planning board likes to rotate membership, so there's a new person on every year. Some other committees, it's the same person, so it's really up to the committee how they designate. So now there's 4 slides that just talks about each one of those resource areas, what the last year's plan identified as a resource, and then goals to protect that. So for community housing, we just completed a housing production plan. So that lays out strategies for the next 5 years for us to increase housing in West Newbury. We have a subsidized housing inventory. These are units that meet the technical affordability requirements of the state. We have an inclusionary housing requirements bylaw and also the Affordable Housing Trust. So those are the resources. And then in the next column are the goals that the CPC identified last year to try to protect and enhance these resources. So implementing the 2025 housing production plan is one goal. We actually don't have the final version, so I think this will probably continue over into next year. Just kind of a general goal is to support affordable housing for all ages, abilities, and income levels. And then we do an annual transfer of the community housing funds to the Affordable Housing Trust. Because we have the Affordable Housing Trust and they're set up to promote affordable housing, it's just made sense to transfer the community, the 10% of the funds to that entity instead of us trying to manage that. Historic resources, you can see those listed on the left-hand column. I don't think this will probably change, the training field area. We have several eligible town-owned buildings, including this building, the town hall, the Soldiers and Sailors building, Page School, and the Pike State Hill area. And then the Historic Commission has identified several churches, cemeteries, and bridges. These are enumerated in the plan. And then also historic documents and artifacts. So our goals for last year was to support preservation of these town-owned properties, assess the inventory and means of preserving historic documents, and then to identify a dedicated space in town to house these documents. Open space, the resources that we identified were water resources, extensive protected open space, and then the 2018 Open Space and Recreation Plan. And we just updated the action plan for that it gives us 3 more years of eligibility. And then the goals are to protect parcels that might be probable sources of water or around probable sources of water. Continue to support purchase and protection of open space. And to rehabilitate and restore properties if they require the CPA funds. And then there's some strategies here, controlling invasive plants, mowing strategies, and so forth. And then for recreational resources, public access, we have 16 open space properties. So open space properties, if there are trails on them, then they're considered a recreational resource because trails are passive recreation. Merrimack River is a great resource for being on the water as well as next to it. Bachelor Street Complex, and then Pike State Hill. And then the goals that we identified is to establish an accessible trail and recreational features, increasing public access to the Merrimack River, identifying options to improve the availability and safety of parking at Pike State Hill. It's a heavily used area. And often there are conflicts about parking. And then to pursue a new and expanded multi-generational recreational facility. So these are goals. It doesn't mean we reached all of them, but those are the things that we had identified last year that would enhance those resources. And, so current CPA projects, as I mentioned, in the past several years, we've transferred the 10% component of the community preservation funds to the Affordable Housing Trust. So this year it was $73,000. The pickleball court construction, that the $175,000, that came from the undesignated fund that I mentioned, because there wasn't enough money left in the recreation part, and that was also in spring. So the transfer is completed, the pickleball court construction is underway. Angus, do you want to give an update on where we stand?
Sure, we went out to bid this fall. We got a number of proposals, awarded the contract, and they've completed what the goal was for this calendar year, which is the base course of paving. So in the spring, they'll finish the top course of paving, the fencing, the bench, trails, signage. So we're right on schedule for that. So it should be playable by late spring.
Good. I think that's the last slide. Yeah, so this is the opportunity for members as well as, well, let's start with the public. If you have any questions or comments or things that you think we should add to our 2025 goals and resources, now's your chance to speak up. Dick, did you have something?
The first thing that jumps into my head is people drive by the Solstice and Sailors building and look at it. If they're relatives that I have, family or friends of other people that I know, it's not unusual for them to say, they've been driving through this town that they rave about, And they say, what's up with that, what's up with that building, they laugh. And so, I'm thinking that there's certain, innate, features of the building that, not being an engineer or architect, I would say, or a structural person, a builder, are in danger of failing, collapsing, whatever. I can't myself put it. I've had people tell me, I've had people in the business tell me in months and years or whatever, but I can't, I don't know. So I would just say that's an art, for me, that's an art,
Mhm.
kind of take from everyday life.
Yeah, yeah, so that was, that is
Yeah.
on our list. Any other comments?
Yeah, so this is all being recorded, correct?
Yep.
And if there's a member of the community who has some input that they would normally have said at this point in the meeting,
Mhm.
how should they get in contact with us?
They should send an email to, the CPC, it's your ad.
Yeah, they
email
could just
on
send
it.
us my email
Yeah.
address.
It's
Yes.
CPC@WNewbury.org.
So the process, so when we discuss, finalizing the CP plan next time, we could thank you for bringing that up.
I mean, there's still time. If somebody
Oh, yeah.
sees this recording in the next couple of weeks, they should please send their input in.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do is once the recording is finalized, we can send out an email blast saying, here's the annual hearing, then give an email address.
And then there's a distinction here. I think there's general input on our plan
Mhm.
and specifically with respect to this meeting. And then you might just mention if somebody in the public here in West Newbury, or if there's a group of people in West Newbury and they've got a good idea,
Mhm.
how do they go about applying for some of those undesignated funds?
Yeah, so the first thing would be to get in touch with Jen, who is the administrative assistant for the CPC. She can show you the forms and help you figure out how to complete them, and then we'll get on the agenda.
And we can take suggestions if somebody has, if somebody would like access to some of this money for a project.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what the money is there for.
Right.
And we haven't had that many projects come forward recently, is that
Yeah,
correct?
yes, I mean, just 2 last year.
Right,
Yeah. Typically, they seem to be large dollar items for land purchases. We've had some for like the playground at the Page School.
Right.
That was a recent big one. Yeah, so there is on the CPC webpage, there is information about prior projects. That's a good place to look. There's also some good resource information. Anybody can certainly reach out to me, if you have questions, whether you think the project would, be eligible, and always reach out to Jen.
thanks. Just thought this was a
Yeah.
good time.
Yep, excellent.
I have a question. There was a slide that showed the relative balances for open space and historic purposes. How is that figure calculated? Over what period of time do you calculate how much is left, say, for open space and historic resources, for example? I'm just curious how that figure is calculated.
So that's a static number. That's just like your bank account. So after everything that was added in this year and taken out, that's the balance.
So it's 10%, so open space, for example, is 10% of the total.
It's 10% every year of the total. So last year, I think it was 73,000. Each of those categories got 73,000. So that represents money that was unspent from the prior year.
Okay, and what is the percentage for historic resources?
10%,
Okay.
yeah.
And if I
I mean,
may,
that figure just jumped out at me. There's so much more for historic resources than open space, and I'm just,
That's because it hasn't been spent. I mean, the historic resources projects have been like 4,000.
yeah.
The surveys were 25,000.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And that was reimbursed.
Yeah, so
So-
that's the reason why, John, the
Okay.
open space projects have been more expensive.
and if I may, that 10% that goes into these categories, it's protected for those categories.
Yeah.
So if somebody came up and wanted a big land purchase, that 510,000 can't be used for land purchase. So they'd have to use what's in open space and then they could apply for the undesignated.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
get that.
So it protects basically a certain amount of money for each
Okay.
category.
And any proposal that comes forward, and is, I guess, approved by the select board, would have to go to town meeting, is that correct?
Any proposal that was approved by this committee,
Okay,
it doesn't, I mean, the select board sets the warrant, but they don't have a formal approval process for the
Okay.
CPC
so
process.
it's this committee that would approve it, and then
Make a recommendation
take
to
a recommendation from whatever also committee maybe that it would most align with, and then select board, okay.
I also forget, how much, does it have, if town meeting, what sort of a percentage of the vote does it need to have? Is it just a simple majority?
Any other questions, comments?
Doug, do you wanna just preview some of your commission's working on for proposals?
Sure, yeah, there are kind of some big ticket items. One is a complete rebuild of Action Cove, and it would be via this company called Play by Design. Fantastic company. The gentleman that owns it actually built Action Cove 30 odd years ago. That was like one of his first jobs in the playground industry. So he remembered it when I touched base with him. And he's in Ithaca, New York. So they would send a representative out. We work with the school, and they actually ask the kids to draw their dream playground. A designer then takes all those designs and comes up with like a quick sketch, presents that to the kids, get a little bit more input, and then gets it out to the community. And then we would do a community build. So it's something that would take about, probably from start to finish, about a year and a half. Because just to get the ball rolling, and it's been suggested by him that we start a nonprofit, and there's some other moving parts there that the Parks and Rec Commission will work on. So it'd be a big ticket item number to cover removal and demolition of Action Cove, because they don't cover that. Then it would also be to design and make the parts of the playground. And then they send people out when you pick your build week, you build the entire playground in 1 week. They send some folks out, it's like 4 or 5 people from Play by Design. They help supervise the build, but it really is about the community building it. So we wouldn't be looking to the town for like the DPW to build it or pay Play by Design to build it, because then that's another huge number. So I just thought, we as a commission thought that would be a really wonderful way to rebuild and honor Action Cove, because we know how special it is to so many of us. And like, I played on Action Cove growing up as a kid, so it's funny how it's kind of come full circle. So we have Action Cove 2.0 kind of in the works, in the very beginning stages of that. And then another thing is to just connect all of the recreational spaces at Bachelor Street, Camden Park. So we want to come up with a path from like the snack shack down between the 2 fields, the 2 baseball fields, kind of down to where the new pickleball site will be. And then if it's feasible to have another trail from like the upper parking lot here over here by the bandstand, and kind of bring that back around to like Action Cove. But there's some wetlands over there, so we're not, we haven't really gotten terribly far. I'm just working on the applications for our next meeting, really. So that would get figured out, I guess, if approved. That'll get figured out if we can do the bandstand path. So it's just to try to connect everything over there and kind of tighten the space up. So like I said, the Action Cove 2.0 thing is a big ticket item. I want to do some fundraising with it too, and that's why it was recommended we start a nonprofit, so that I spoke with Angus about the town soliciting donations, and that gets very complicated quickly. So it's just easier to have a nonprofit to be able to put the money in an account, sort of thing. So the fundraising would try to defray some of the cost, but given that we have a rather large amount of money to tap into, I don't feel like we need to fundraise 100% of the playground like some communities have done. Play by Design has done stuff all around the world. Actually, they've done stuff in Europe and Australia, as well as all over the United States, and they've done stuff as close as Ipswich, Newbury, and I think Rowley. They're a really, really wonderful company. Their website's pretty cool, all the stuff that they do. So yeah, that's kind of what we got going on in the Parks and Rec world, and not, 2 applications are coming in January from Parks and Rec for some hefty things, so.
Okay, so the intent is Springtown meeting for both, or do you?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, and then ideally, Action Cove, if, you know, if it passes, right, there are a lot of ifs, but if it does pass and get funded, I'd like to try to have it be so that the build would be fall of 27, so we would start the process in fall of 2026. And then build week would be the fall of 2027. And it was recommended fall because, you know, everyone travels during the summer. Fall, people are back home, kids are in school, so you can get parents to maybe to be more involved with helping with building and helping organize volunteers and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah.
Thanks.
Just a comment, wouldn't that be? Version 3.0, wasn't it built by volunteers originally behind the Page School? I thought it was behind the Page School. Yeah,
I worked on this one.
It was built by the Janelle family side in this back.
was it always been in that spot?
Always been in that.
Okay, but it was built by volunteers.
Yes,
Then it was rebuilt again.
it was, yeah, it has been updated and stuff over the years.
Yeah.
But yes, it has.
So that would be 3.0.
So I guess 3.0, I'm gonna go 3.4, right?
It's not big.
I gotta change everything now. Yeah.
Part is that my kids have not been young enough to play.
Yeah, and it's been repaired a few times with CPC funds, but there's some stuff that's broken, and I've had some folks text me pictures of broken things, and I get that stuff over to Brian, and sometimes it's like, hey, it's not worth spending the money on fixing, so.
It's getting tired.
It's tired, yeah, and just like the material is very outdated, like it's all pressure treated wood, and that's really not used
I
anymore.
think splinters are an issue.
Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff, so, the new, if approved, it would be all like recycled material. There'd be a new flooring system that, so when kids fall, it's like kind of suspended in a way, so like it lessens like the fall, so it's safer. Better ADA compliance and access, so it'd be a really huge revamp. And something that would be pretty wonderful for not just the town, and so many people use that space, so. And we wanna take a lot of great care with how it's approached. You know, so.
Any other projects people are aware of? This is later on our agenda, but probably a good time to discuss now.
Can I jump back in with my
Sure.
historical statements? I've been the Grand Marshal for the parade on Memorial Day, you know, a couple of times. I've been president of the Historical Society of Lancaster. The Soldiers and Sales building is a key part of Memorial Day. You know, the high school band stops in front of the building, plays a wonderful medley in honor of Memorial Day. Many of you know Amy Friend, and she's prepared to play taps at the building and so on and so forth. If given that the building is probably not going to get any on its own, it is not going to get any repairs. I used the word repairs. What is the board, what is the, probably the obvious next step for the board, I won't say it, what is it? Can you? Yeah,
What board? The select board?
this board,
This committee? So this committee doesn't write the applications. It's up to somebody who has a project to write the application, and we evaluate it and approve it. And we evaluate it and consider whether we think the town should support it. So someone else has to do, fill out the application.
but you're gonna, on your, it's on your table
No, we have nothing before us right now. We have nothing on the Soders and Sailors before us. There was some interest in it, but that has, I won't say the interest has fizzled out, but the approach that was being considered is no longer in the works.
To just let me put it. Probably almost the same way. I'll ask you a question, is the building as it is right now? With no work done on it? No work and no work done on it,
Mhm.
is it going to get, more, flawed? Does anybody have can anybody here say, maybe not, or whatever, does this board feel? Can I ask that of you, of the
You can
board?
ask the question, but that's not our function. Our function is to review applications that residents or committees bring to us.
Yeah,
So we don't have any information on the current status of that building or the longevity or anything like that. That would be up to people to bring that forward.
I will tell you that if you don't do something with that building, it is going to fall down.
I mean, that's common sense, but we don't have any formal.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just simply saying if we don't do something with it, it's gonna fall down.
So just to be clear, a group of, a single person, but more likely a group of people, they have to put together an idea about what they want to do with the building. And then they have to formalize that in the form of a proposal. And then they bring the proposal to this committee. And then the committee reviews that proposal. So for example, if you and a few others who, you know, I care about the building too, but you get together with some other people and say, look, we wanna repair this and do the other thing, and it's gonna cost $1 million. And you put that proposal together with the information to back up your numbers and whatnot, then you would apply to this committee for review. And if this committee thought it was worthwhile and that it fulfilled the requirements of the state, so it was a valid proposal, then this committee might decide to bring it to the town. And then at town meeting, the town could vote to fund your proposal. But this committee doesn't act until a formal proposal with a proposed budget number comes to the committee. Did I get that right?
Yep.
So it's not our business to figure that stuff out. Somebody else has to figure out what they want to do and present that to us.
it's a historic resource, where
It is, but there has to be a proponent for the project. We don't go out and choose projects and do all of the work to apply. For example, when this was brought forward several years ago, there was a group that had been established and, you know, they hired an architect and that was all, that wasn't this committee that did it, that was all work that they did and brought to this committee to be reviewed and approved. I'm happy to talk more about this with you, at some point, if it's not clear still what we're saying.
Yeah, for example, Parks and Rec, they're working on 2 projects. And they're gonna tidy it all up, put it in a proposal, and then bring it to the committee. That's what we expect there. And somebody might propose to buy a tract of land for more open space. They would come together, figure out what it would cost, and then they would bring that proposal to us. But we don't go out and look for opportunities to spend the money.
Does the fact that it was proposed and then voted down at town meeting have any weight on it, and you could just keep bringing it forward every year?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And it
I mean,
would
it
probably
could.
change a little.
yeah, it could have weight in the individual members of the committee that when they say this is already been tried and approved, but there's nothing, I'm not aware of
Stops
anything in the
you.
reg, so you, yeah,
Yeah.
And the committee changes.
yeah, that's true.
So what if, an open space parcel comes up?
Mhm.
I don't know if anything's in the works, But, we just deal with that when it happens or when it comes public.
This committee,
Yeah, I
yeah, we would
mean,
wait for an
well,
application,
yeah,
so,
there would be an application.
yeah, so either open space committee or Greenbelt or somebody should bring it forward.
Yeah.
But that's the reason to put all these things in the community preservation plan, to say what we think are, you know, valuable
Right, I
resources.
thought you were trying to anticipate what might be coming down the pipe.
Oh, yeah, that was just a general question, you
Yeah.
know, just conversation, I mean, it helps for planning. But, so far, there's nothing specific. Any other comments or questions from the public? Not, we'll move on to our regular agenda. Are going to follow up after the meeting, Dick, or sometime later on? Or do you feel like you are clear on this committee's function?
It's a line and a line of emphasis that this committee is, has put in the loop. The historic resources.
Mhm.
That building is a historic resource. And period, end of story.
Can you go back to the historic resource goals? There's also several other resources that are identified in the plan. So just because it's in the plan doesn't mean it's gonna happen. They're towards the end, I guess, yeah. I think it's before the open space, yeah. Yeah, so churches, cemeteries, bridges, these have been identified by the historic commission as valuable resources for the town. Yes, the training field area, you know, the town hall, we've done some work at the town hall, the windows and so forth. So I'm not minimizing the soldiers and sailors, I'm just saying it's one of many historic resources in town that we feel are important and should be preserved. But somebody's gotta take the reins and bring it in as a project, so.
Has it been, I haven't read everything that's been printed in the last couple of years. So is it documented anywhere that's in material that's coming before the board? That the building has structural problems. As that been shown, have you read it in the report? And
No report has been submitted to this committee about that.
Oh.
So,
But I think we all know that building is in danger. And I think that if somebody were to bring a proposal to this committee, that the committee would find it a valid recipient under the state guidelines, because it is an historic structure. So the missing piece here is a group to get together and put a proposal together for what they want to do and how much it's going to cost.
okay.
I mean, is the selling it to a private party off the table?
well, it is because the zoning was not passed to allow that. Remember, we had tried to do that. We had a private business person was interested in buying it and having a business there, but it's not zoned for that. It's only zoned for residential.
Otherwise, no interest in it?
No, because it's only zoned for residential and there's no septic system and no dedicated parking. So it's kind of a tough sell
Yeah.
if you were gonna continue the same use.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so I guess, the next item on the agenda was revising the community preservation plan. I kind of assigned each one of you to look at your section. I don't know if you've had a chance, probably not, to discuss it with your committees, but ultimately, for the next meeting, I'd like to have some specific feedback, whether it's wording changes or you know, additional goals that we didn't have on there that you think are important. Jen is helping me go through and correct all the numbers and, you know, make it current. But certainly if there are things that have changed in your area, you know, let us know and we'll adjust the goals and at least.
You looked at the historic part of it,
Yeah,
and I haven't brought it up with the board, we don't meet till the 22nd, but
Okay.
There was something that you had to live with the cemeteries, some of the information in that was wrong. So I
oh,
want to,
okay, that came from Elisa. So that's interesting.
And some of it's wrong.
Okay, well, that's the kind of thing we want to update, if there's any mistakes in there, So can we agree to do that for the next meeting? Then everybody will have met, I'm pretty sure. Are you meeting anytime
Well, we
soon?
can, yeah, we can
Okay,
figure it out.
so I think unless you have any other ideas about how to update this, I think that's the easiest way to just divide it in sections.
Yeah.
Are people generally happy with the format or? I mean, it's kind of prescribed that you identify resources, needs and goals, so.
I do have a question about the open space section. I'm sort of curious who wrote this, and is this sort of what has gone from year to year to year? It seems like a very much a historical document. It goes even back to 1996.
Yeah,
So I'm just sort of curious where it came from.
yeah, so we did kind of a major overhaul of this 3 or 4 years ago. And at the time, we had the individual members help with the writing. Last year, we did a pretty I would say overhaul of it based on Carol's input. I mean, she actually sent, written markups of the section. So it is meant to reflect the history, but definitely we want to include the new content. So if you think things should be changed, if you.
I mean, I didn't see anything, except generally, we have the 2025 OSRP coming out,
Mhm.
and we cite the 2018 OSRP. So maybe there should be some reflection. of-
Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed in the slides, I mean, we're not gonna have a 2025, but we have the updated action plan.
Yeah,
And so that, I think I added that, that's mentioned now in that text.
okay, that's the
Yeah.
only thing that's gonna change.
Yeah, but you may have different goals, you may have identified new resources that weren't in there before, so that's the kind of thing that you should,
Okay,
discuss and, you can either like mark it up, or we could just discuss it at the next meeting.
okay.
Make changes.
And the other thing that, jumped out at me, and I'm not even sure where it fits, but there's no mention at all of the open space committee in the open space report. I mean, it should probably have a pretty meaty paragraph about what the open space committee does and what its role is.
Mhm.
So,
So draft that.
yeah, I'd be happy to,
So that would be, I mean, arguably that's a resource under open space,
yeah,
a town resource, yeah,
right.
yeah, that's good. All right, so that's our plan. Hopefully we can kind of work on this in January and then have the final in February. I think that's reasonable. We went for several years without updating it, so even if we're a month or two late, I think that's pretty good. Let's see what else is on the agenda. Pending applications we discussed already. Any comments on the November 12th minutes? Can you scroll ahead to those? I think they're at the very end of the packet.
Sure, driving from the passenger seat there.
I know. I don't think we did very much at once. We just reviewed the slide deck and. Oh, there was an update on the soldiers and sailors. That's been, Angus had explained the potential interest in a project which kind of fell through. Any changes? I have a motion to accept them.
Move to accept these minutes as drafted.
Second. Cheers.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. And then Jen, would you open the tab next to that? The financials came out after I had already sent this out. I don't know if people can see that. I'm happy to send it out separately. Oh, thanks. Yeah, so this just shows, like the first is the project, the pickleball project, so it looks like not too much has been spent yet. And then we have the trail markers for Mill Pond. I'm not sure what the third sector is. Do you know what that is, Jen?
No, thinking expenses, so
Oh,
that's
okay.
all the administrative.
This is all the administrative, so we're also allowed to have 5% of the total go to administrative. We don't set aside quite that much, but that funds Jen's salary as well as like legal ads and that kind of thing. And then the last one,
More on pickleball.
pickleball.
Construction.
Yeah, so I think, I'm sorry, the first one was the support we had a CPA project a couple of years ago for the feasibility study and design, so that's what that first one was for. It's lights.
Does pickleball, well, I guess it would come out of Park and Rec.
Yeah, it's a well, open
Yeah.
space and recreation. Yeah.
Oh, so it wouldn't be from the undesignated?
Well, it did, but it's an open space and recreation project, so we would have to consider whether to use up all that money first or whether to just take it out of undesignated. But that's part of the application, you would say where you wanted it to come from.
Okay. Good to know.
All right. That's all I have on the agenda. January, we will meet the second Wednesday at 6 o'clock, I promise. So I'm sorry about the runaround the last 2 minutes. It's just been tough to manage. Everybody meets on Wednesday, so if you get off on one meeting, then they all get bumped back, so.
Kind of like floods.
Yes, exactly like flights. So thank you for your patience. And if Barry can't be here next time, I'm gonna be in huge trouble, so. All
Do you
right,
want me to check the room calendar right now while I have it up to make sure?
sure,
Okay.
that would be awesome.
So we're talking 14th.
14th, yeah.
So as of right now, we're on for,
Oh, we're already in.
we're in there already. Somebody put us in for 6 o'clock and there's nothing else. So
Great.
we're good. We're
All right, okay,
Yeah, January 14th.
yeah, 6 o'clock.
So, motion to
Guaranteed,
adjourn.
yes.
Move
Second,
to adjourn.
all in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for coming.